right then, I saw the opportunity. This wasn't about price. This was about solving the right problem. That's why the conflict matters, because it reveals the real objection. And if I'd gotten defensive in that moment, if I had said that's ridiculous or started rattling off comps, I would have lost this deal and the relationship. You ever find yourself about to pick up the phone or walk into a seller meeting and your stomach drops? You know this conversation is going to be hard. The seller is older, skeptical, maybe even combative. And you're not sure what to say because deep down, you're afraid they might shut you down before you even finish your pitch. That fear, that resistance, it's normal because difficult sellers aren't the exception. They're the rule. I've talked to sellers who were cold as ice, some who laughed in my face, some who told me I was wasting their time, and yeah, some who asked me to leave. But I've walked out of those same conversations with signed contract, seller finance terms, zero down deals, and relationships that led to repeat deals. So what's the difference? Why does one investor walk away empty-handed while another walks out with a 24-unit deal? It's not just numbers. It's not just charm, and it's not just luck. It's communication. It's strategy. It's learning how to talk to difficult sellers with confidence, empathy, and control. In today's episode, I'm going to give you the mindset that sets you apart, the mistakes that are costing you deals, and the strategy I use to turn confrontation into conversation every single time. So if you've ever stumbled through a seller call, if you've ever walked away from a deal thinking, man, I could have handled that better, stick with me. This is the episode that turns hesitation into confidence. Now let's bounce. Let me tell you how most people approach seller conversation. They've got a script memorized. They've got those calculators open. They've rehearsed all the smart things they're supposed to say. They walk in thinking, okay, ask about the rent roll, those expenses, cap rate, and then make an offer, like it's a formula or a job interview. But the moment they meet resistance, that seller who is skeptical or cold or just tired of being lied to, they freeze. Or worse, they push harder. And that's when the conversation turns to stone. Listen, I don't care how good your LOI template is. If the seller thinks you're just another shark looking to score a deal, you're dead in the water before the first number hits the page. Because here's what most new investors miss. You're not talking to a spreadsheet, you're talking to a person. And this person has a past with reasons for holding that property, with pain they might never say out loud, and with walls up higher than your goals. You ever walked a 20 unit with a guy who's been managing it for himself for 25 years? The guy that's fixed the toilets, collected the rent from the tenants he watched grow up, put paint on the walls himself after dinner, and now some investor's going to show up with a fresh haircut and a calculator, and you think he's going to be impressed by your ROI slides? No! He wants to know if you get it, if you see him, if you respect him and what he's built, even if it's outdated, under-rented, or half vacant. This is what I call life before the shift. It's where most new or even seasoned investors get stuck. They're focusing on price instead of the people, and they're chasing those numbers instead of the nuance. They think that negotiation is about domination, and it's really about aligning with that seller. Because here's the truth. You don't need to be the smartest person in the room, and you don't need a perfect pitch deck. You need to listen deeper than anyone else ever has. You need to see past the bricks into the story. And you need to know when to shut up and let him speak and tell you about his life. And that's what this episode is all about. It's not about getting the upper hand. It's about creating a conversation that unlocks real deals. Deals that would have never happened if you had just stuck to the script. Because I've been the guy who thought the numbers alone would carry me. And I've been the one who finally realized the sellers don't want perfect, they just want real. Now let me take you back to one of my very first direct-to-seller meetings. I had done all the right things. I sent those personalized letters. He called me back. We set up a meeting. I even brought a clipboard like I knew what I was doing. But from the moment I stepped out of the car, I could feel it. Tension, distrust, defensiveness. He looked me up and down and said, "So what is your ankle?" Not welcome, not glad to meet you, just suspicion. A wall built higher than the roof of his 24-unit building. Now, I'd love to tell you that I handled it like a pro, but the truth is I almost blew this deal. I started asking questions too fast, pulled out my notes, tried to show I've done my homework, and every time I spoke, he got quieter. Every time I tried to steer this conversation, he pulled back harder. And I could feel this deal slipping away. Not because those numbers were bad and not because the connection was broke. And right there in the middle of that tension, I made a choice. I put that paper down, I looked him in the eye, and I said, "Listen, I get it. You've probably had people promise you the world and disappear as soon as it got hard. I'm not going to be here wasting your time. I just want to understand what you've built and where you're trying to go next." And that was the moment it shifted. It wasn't instant and it wasn't magical, but his shoulders started to soften. His voice changed. He started telling me those stories. How he had bought the place when his son was 5. How he had laid the tile himself. How the lady in Unit 6 still bakes him cookies at Christmas. Because look, I wasn't just buying apartments. I was buying a chapter in his life, and he needed to know that I respected that. That day taught me something I'll never forget. You don't get deals by sounding smart. You get deals by being a human. Especially with sellers who've been through the ringer. They don't want pressure. They want your presence and they want you to listen. And if you can bring that, you're no longer just an investor. You're going to become the one they trust when it's time to let go. So now I had a choice. I could keep pushing with numbers, or I could do what no one else had done with this guy. And I chose the second option. I stopped trying to close and started trying to understand his story. That's when I started building what I now call framework for talking to those difficult sellers. And if you're taking notes, write these down because they're going to change the way you negotiate forever. Number 1, ask about their story before the spreadsheet. You walk into the conversation thinking about NOI and cap rates. They're walking in thinking about the memories and the risks and that they are letting go. It's their baby. So instead of opening up with how many vacancies do you have, just ask, how long have you owned a place? What made you buy it in the first place? Because the story opens the heart, and once the heart opens, then the numbers come easy. Number 2, let them teach you. Look, most of these sellers, they've forgotten more than you've learned. They have weathered recessions, evicted those professional tenants. They've patched those roofs with duct tape and a prayer. So stop trying to impress them with your vocabulary. Lean in with some humility and say, "I'd love to learn from you about how you've run this over the years. What worked well for you?" Show them respect, because respect is the currency that's going to buy you trust. Number 3, don't chase price, chase the pain. If they say, "I want $2 million and not a penny less," instead of arguing, just get curious and ask them, what would that number allow you to do next? What are you trying to solve for? Because price is never just a number. It's a feeling, it's a freedom, it's identity. And if you solve for the why, you can shape a win-win offer that's actually going to stick. Number 4, don't talk like a spreadsheet. You know the guy that walks in and says, "Based on the T12, we think the IRR could hit 14% after our CapEx stabilization play." And the seller hears blah, 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 blah. "I'm going to insult your life's work and act like I know better." Look, lose the jargon. Speak in pictures. Say, "I see this property got solid bones and I'd love to breathe new life into it." Simple, respectful, and human. Number 5, let them retire with dignity. This might be the most important one. When you talk to a seller who's built something from scratch, You're not just negotiating a transaction, you're helping them close a chapter of their life. And if you make them feel like they lost in that process, that deal is dead. But if you say, I want to carry your legacy forward the right way, and you actually mean it, it's going to open doors for you that no broker ever could. That's the framework I used in that conversations, and dozens more after that. And it works, because this game, it's not about being slick, it's about being real. So here's your takeaway. Stop chasing sellers like you're auditioning. Start showing up like someone worthy of trust. Because when you treat them with honor, you don't have to close the deal. They'll close it for you. So I'm sitting across from the seller. We've built the rapport. I've listened to his story. He's opening up. We're walking units, swapping memories, and laughing about the tenant with the 12 cats. And then, boom, we sit down and he drops a number that's way over market. And I mean way over. I'm talking $500,000 more than any bank would lend on. More than what it's going to appraise for, and more than what made sense even with seller financing. So what was my gut reaction? This deal's dead. There's no way I can make this work. I guess this was just another waste of my time. But then I caught myself. Because this is where most people fold. Right here, at the conflict. The seller finally gives you his number and you flinch. You got nervous and you start convincing. Or worse, you are now arguing, and that's how the trust dies. So this time I did something different. I said, that's definitely higher than I was expecting, but I respect that number. Can I ask you how I came to it? Not in a combative way, not dismissive, just curious. And what he said next changed the whole game. He told me the number wasn't about profit, it was about replacing his income. See, he was retiring. He didn't want to worry about tenants or taxes anymore. He just wanted a steady check every month, like the one the rent had been given him for 30 years. He didn't need a huge payday. He needed security. And right then, I saw the opportunity. This wasn't about price. This was about solving the right problem. That's why the conflict matters, because it reveals the real objection. And if I'd gotten defensive in that moment, if I had said that's ridiculous or started rattling off comps, I would have lost this deal and the relationship. But because I held the line with curiosity and composure, we kept talking. We found a common ground and we created terms that worked for both of us. Here's the truth. Most deals don't die at the beginning. They die in the middle, when emotions rise and egos flare and someone forgets why they started. If you want to win with the difficult sellers, you've got to stay calm when it counts. Not just when it's easy, but when the whole thing's on the line. So there we were. I listened. I respected his number. I had uncovered the real need, income, not ego. Now it was time to bridge the gap. So I said, what if we structure this deal so you still get the same monthly income, but without the headaches, the tenants, or the taxes? And he raised that eyebrow, didn't say a word, just nodded for me to go on. So I pulled out a blank piece of paper, not a spreadsheet and not a contract, just space, room to create something together, and I started sketching some things out. Seller financing note, interest-only payment, balloon in 3 to 5 years, monthly income that matched what he had been getting from the property, but now with zero work. I wasn't trying to win. I wasn't trying to convince. I was trying to solve his problem better than anyone else had offered to. And after a long pause, he leaned back in his chair, let out a breath like he had been holding it for 10 years, and then he said, no one's ever put it that way. That was the moment it all turned. Not when I pitched the offer, not when I listed out my comps, not when I tried to prove I knew more than him. It turned when I stopped trying to win the deal and started trying to understand that man. If there's one thing I want you to take from this story, it's this. Deals are not closed on price. Deals are closed on alignment. And when the seller feels seen, heard, understood. That's when the walls fall down. That's when creativity becomes currency. So the next time you're sitting across from a seller who seems difficult, don't try to bulldoze your way through. Listen, ask questions, find the fear behind the number, and co-create something that works for the both of you. Because trust me, that's where the real deals live. So what happened with that seller? We didn't sign a contract that day. We didn't handshake over some slick closing lines. There were no fireworks. But 2 days later, he called me. I've been thinking about our conversation, he said. If you can make the numbers work, I want to move forward with your offer. And that property, it turned out to be one of the best deals I've ever done. Not just because of the numbers, but because of the trust it was built on. So let's break this down. Let's turn this story into something you can actually use. So here are 5 lessons you should take with you today. Number 1, difficult sellers aren't difficult. They're protecting something. Understand this, and you'll never feel intimidated again. This resistance isn't personal, it's protective. They've built something they care about. Your job is to honor that first and negotiate second. Number 2, never lead with the numbers. Lead with curiosity. Data doesn't build deals. Trust does. Ask better questions. Slow down. Let them share what matters before you start calculating what's possible. Number 3, people remember how you make them feel, especially those sellers. Make them feel heard, respected, understood. Make them feel like this deal is a transition, not a transaction. That alone can change the terms in your favor. Number 4, always solve for the why. When they give you a price, find the purpose behind it. Maybe they want out fast. Maybe they want income. Maybe they want to win just once in their lifetime. Find the why and you'll unlock the how. Number 5, your job isn't to impress, it's to align. This is the biggest one. Stop trying to sound smart. Stop trying to be slick. Start focusing on what both sides need and build the bridge that gets you there. Now look, you don't have to be a world-class negotiator to land amazing deals. You just have to be present, be real, be willing to sit in silence long enough for trust to show up. Because sellers don't want perfection. They want clarity. They want certainty. And they want a connection. So next time you're walking into a conversation with a tough seller, don't brace for battle. Lean in with curiosity. Build a connection and speak like someone who actually cares. Because if you do that, even the most difficult sellers might just become your best deal yet.